November 23rd, 1944, 1400 hours. A cold wind pressed through the forested ridge outside Guebling, France, bending the skeletal branches of leafless trees and stirring curtains of mist that clung stubbornly to the valley floor. Hauptmann Werner Stolz, commanding a platoon of Panther Ausf G tanks, wiped condensation from his field glasses and peered through the armored vision port of his cupola. Below, ghost-like shapes moved through the haze. American vehicles, elongated silhouettes filtering through grey light. Elements of the American 12th Armored Division were on the move. His notebook from that morning, still tucked under his map case, reflected his confidence, perhaps even his certainty. The Americans now mount 76mm guns. He had written, "Our intelligence confirms they have acknowledged the inadequacy of their old 75mm weapons. Those guns are obsolete, incapable of penetrating Panther frontal armor against our glacis and mantlet. They are powerless. We hold the advantage." Those words had felt solid, reassuring. German engineering superiority had been proven on countless battlefields. The Panther, heavily armored, lethal, and intimidating, was proof enough. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But as Stolz watched through his optics, something unsettled him. The vehicles he now observed were not M18 Hellcats with 76mm guns. They were unmistakably M10 tank destroyers, angular hulls, open-topped turrets and all, still mounting the supposedly obsolete 75mm guns. The same guns his intelligence reports had confidently dismissed. Yet what unnerved him was not their presence, but their behavior. These American crews did not rush, they did not falter, they did not behave like men uncertain of their weapons. Instead, they were deliberate, almost surgical, in how they positioned their machines. One driver angled his M10 behind a cluster of pines, rotated slightly, then reversed slowly, until only his gun barrel and a sliver of upper hull remained visible. Another parked behind a rocky outcrop overlooking the road, lowering the barrel as though preparing for a precise shot rather than a hasty one. They moved with purpose, as if they knew something the Germans did not. Stolz lowered his glasses. Something was wrong. The Panther, with its magnificent frontal armor, could indeed shrug off 75mm shells if they struck head-on. German engineers had designed it precisely for that defense, but its side armor, far thinner, remained vulnerable. Doctrine dictated that Panthers should face threats directly, using their frontal armor to dominate from long range. But the Americans were not shaping the battlefield for frontal engagements. They were shaping it for angles. Lethal, hidden, carefully chosen angles. Stolz relayed orders. Form, hull down positions. Watch the ridge lines at 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. They'll try to flank. But even as he spoke, movement flashed from the tree line. A muzzle flash, then another. The sharp, concussive crack of 75mm guns echoed across the valley. On paper, those guns were obsolete. In practice, inexperienced hands firing from ambush positions into exposed Panther flanks at under 600 meters, obsolete became lethal. Within the first 60 seconds, 2 Panthers burned. Stolz's headset crackled with frantic radio calls. "They're picking us apart. How?" He knew the answer. It wasn't about the gun. It was about doctrine. It was about how the Americans used what they had, not to fight the Panther on its terms, but to force the Panther to fight on theirs. What German intelligence had failed to grasp was simple. Obsolescence is contextual. A weapon is only obsolete when used incorrectly, when forced into a fight that exposes its limitations. But when employed in ways that emphasize its strengths, speed of targeting, rapid reload, concealment, flanking maneuver, its age becomes irrelevant. The 75mm gun that could not penetrate German armor from the front could and did penetrate it from the side. Again and again. Properly aimed, properly positioned, and properly disciplined, it proved not merely adequate, but deadly. That afternoon, the Panthers fought not American technology, but American cunning. Not superior shells, but superior thinking. Not better armor, but better positioning. By the time the mist lifted, only one Panther remained operational. And Hauptmann Werner Stolz, in the smoking silence that followed, wrote a new line in his notebook. Obsolete is not a condition, it is a circumstance. And today, circumstances favored the 75. What Stolz didn't know was that in exactly 17 minutes, his entire platoon of 5 Panthers would be engaged by vehicles mounting guns that German technical manuals had classified as obsolete since mid-1944. Within 4 hours, 12 Panthers from his company would be burning wrecks, all destroyed by American M10 tank destroyers that weren't supposed to be able to penetrate their armor. The Battle of Lorraine was entering its bloodiest phase, and across the muddy fields of eastern France, German tank crews were discovering a terrifying reality. The Americans had crews so skilled, tactics so refined, and gunnery so precise that they could defeat superior German armor with weapons everyone agreed were obsolete, not through technological superiority, not through better equipment, but through something far more dangerous, perfect execution of fundamentals that German crews had forgotten in their reliance on superior firepower. The M10 tank destroyer's genesis began in June 1941, 6 months before America entered the war. While German panzer doctrine had already evolved through campaigns in Poland, France, and the opening phases of Operation Barbarossa, American military planners were still developing their response to the armored warfare revolution that had reshaped European battlefields. The tank destroyer force, established under Lieutenant General Leslie James McNair's directive in November 1941, operated on principles documented in Field Manual FM 18-5. The emphasis was aggressive offensive action, seek the enemy's armor, strike with concentrated fire, and destroy through superior tactics. The M10, designated T-35 in development, would embody this philosophy while becoming the most produced American tank destroyer of World War II. Fisher Body Division of General Motors in Grand Blanc, Michigan, received the production contract in September 1942. The facility, purpose-built for tank production, with over 1 million square feet of manufacturing space, faced specifications that seemed modest compared to what would come later. Mount a 3-inch gun, later standardized as 75mm M7, provide sufficient armor to defeat small arms and shell fragments, and maintain mobility comparable to the M4 Sherman tank, upon whose chassis the M10 was based. The solution represented practical American engineering. The M10's hull armor measured 57.15mm at the front at 55 degrees angle, providing effective protection of approximately 100mm. Side armor measured 19.05mm, while the distinctive pentagonal turret featured 57.15mm at the front and 19.05mm on the sides. This was substantial protection compared to the M18 Hellcat, but modest compared to German heavy tanks. The 75mm M7 gun, a variant of the venerable 3-inch anti-aircraft gun, fired the same ammunition as the M3 gun mounted in the M4 Sherman tank. With M62 armor-piercing, capped ballistic cap ammunition, the gun could penetrate 92mm of armor at 500 yards, against the Panther's 80mm frontal armor sloped at 55 degrees, effective thickness approximately 140mm. This appeared hopelessly inadequate. German technical intelligence officers, after examining captured M10 tank destroyers in Italy during early 1944, filed reports documenting enemy tank destroyer mounting obsolete 3-inch weapon, incapable of frontal penetration of Panther or Tiger armor at combat ranges. Recommended crews engage with confidence in frontline protection. This assessment was simultaneously correct and catastrophically wrong. Correct in that the 75mm gun could not reliably penetrate Panther frontal armor with standard ammunition. Wrong in assuming this made the M10 ineffective. What German analysis missed was that American doctrine never intended frontal engagement. The first M10 tank destroyers reached North Africa in early 1943, seeing action with the 601st, 603rd, 604th, 701st, and 899th tank destroyer battalions during the Tunisia campaign. The vehicle's combat debut revealed both strengths and weaknesses that would shape its employment throughout the war. At Kasserine Pass, in February 1943, inadequately trained M10 crews suffered heavy losses when employed incorrectly as static defensive weapons. But by April 1943, at El Gueta, properly employed M10s demonstrated their potential. The 601st Tank Destroyer Battalion, positioned in ambush along Gafsa Gabe's Road, destroyed 30 German tanks for minimal losses by engaging at ranges under 1,000 yards against side and rear armor. The mathematics were simple, but required perfect execution. Panther side armor measured 40 millimeters at vertical angle. At 500 yards, the M10's 75 millimeter gun could penetrate 110 millimeters, nearly triple what was needed. At 1,000 yards, penetration dropped to 92 millimeters, still more than double the requirement. The challenge wasn't penetration capability. It was achieving firing position against side or rear armor before German crews could respond. This required tactics that German crews, trained in methodical frontal engagement doctrine, found incomprehensible. Between September 1942 and December 1943, Fisher Body produced exactly 4,993 M10 tank destroyers, making it the most produced American tank destroyer of World War II. Peak production reached 227 units in March 1943. This massive production run, exceeding German Panther production despite starting later, meant American forces could absorb losses that would cripple German formations. The M10 featured General Motors' 6,046 diesel engine producing 375 horsepower in early production vehicles, or Wright Continental 975 C1 radial gasoline engine producing 400 horsepower in later variants designated M10A1. The diesel version, comprising approximately 54% of production, provided exceptional range of 200 miles compared to the gasoline version's 140 miles. This power, combined with the vehicle's 29.6-ton weight, created a power-to-weight ratio of 12.7 horsepower per ton for diesel variants, 13.5 for gasoline, while inferior to the M18 Hellcat's exceptional 22.5 horsepower per ton. It matched the Panther's 15 horsepower per ton, while providing better reliability. Maximum speed reached 30 miles per hour on roads, 26 miles per hour cross-country for diesel variants. The gasoline-powered M10A1 achieved 32 miles per hour on roads. These speeds, while unremarkable compared to the Hellcat's 55 miles per hour, proved sufficient for the M10's tactical employment as ambush predator rather than pursuit vehicle. The turret, perhaps the M10's most distinctive feature, rotated completely in 75 seconds using manual traverse, 45 seconds with hydraulic assist when available. This was slower than the Panther's 60-second full rotation, but faster than the Tiger's 90 seconds. More importantly, American doctrine emphasized pre-positioning rather than reactive engagement, making traverse speed less critical than German crews assumed. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Italy, in 1944, provided the proving ground where M10 and doctrine matured. The terrain, mountainous with limited roads and restricted sightlines, negated German advantages in long-range gunnery while amplifying American advantages in ambush tactics and crew training. At Anzio, from January to May 1944, M10 battalions achieved remarkable results. The 894th Tank Destroyer Battalion destroyed 78 German tanks, while losing just 16 M10s, a 4.8 to 1 kill ratio. The 751st Tank Destroyer Battalion achieved similar results with 63 kills for 11 losses, 5.7 to 1 ratio. These successes came from refined tactics developed through hard experience. M10 platoons, typically 4 vehicles, operated in coordinated ambushes with carefully prepared firing positions, offering side-angle shots at German armor, forced to advance along predictable routes by terrain. Crews learned to hold fire until German tanks presented optimal target angles, even when this meant allowing enemy vehicles to approach within 300 yards. The psychological effect on German crews was significant. After-action reports from Italian campaign documented increasing reluctance by panzer commanders to advance without extensive reconnaissance, sacrificing momentum to caution. The knowledge that obsolete American guns could still destroy their tanks if ambushed properly created operational paralysis that tactical superiority couldn't overcome. By summer 1944, American armored doctrine had evolved significantly. New 76mm guns mounting, improved muzzle velocity and penetration were available for the M18 Hellcat and late production M4 Shermans. The 90mm armed M36 tank destroyer was entering production. Against this backdrop, the M10, with its 75mm gun, seemed increasingly obsolete. The Ordnance Department proposed halting M10 production and converting existing vehicles to M36 standard with 90mm guns. Tank Destroyer Command resisted, arguing that crew training and tactical employment mattered more than gun caliber. This debate would be settled definitively in the forests of eastern France during autumn 1944. The Lorraine Campaign, September through December 1944, saw some of the most intense tank combat on the Western Front. German forces, reinforced with newly produced Panthers and dug into defensive positions, faced American armies advancing toward the West Wall. The terrain, rolling hills with extensive forests and numerous small villages, created ideal ambush conditions. November the 23rd, 1944, near Guebling, France, would see one of the most remarkable actions in tank destroyer history. The 899th Tank Destroyer Battalion, equipped with M10 tank destroyers, mounting the supposedly obsolete 75mm gun, faced elements of the 11th Panzer Division's Panthers. First Lieutenant Robert L. Klein's platoon, 4 M10s, occupied positions along a wooded ridgeline overlooking the approaches to Guebling. German intelligence indicated American tank destroyers in the sector, but assessment suggested minimal threat due to obsolete armament. Panther crews advanced with confidence that their frontal armor provided near immunity to 75mm fire. At 1417 hours, lead Panthers of the 11th Panzer's reconnaissance force entered the valley. Klein's crew held fire as German tanks advanced, turrets oriented forward, presenting perfect 60-degree side angles to the concealed American positions. At 650 yards, Klein's gunner, Corporal James Mitchell, acquired the lead Panther's side armor just behind the turret ring. The first round, M62 APCBC, struck precisely at the junction of hull side armor and turret race. Penetration was catastrophic. The Panther's ammunition stored in sponsons ignited immediately, turrets separating from hull in the characteristic explosion that signified total kill. Elapsed time from shot to detonation, 1.3 seconds. The second Panther, responding to the destruction ahead, began traversing turret toward the American position. Mitchell's loader, Private Eugene Torres, had already loaded the next round. 2.6 seconds after the first shot, Mitchell fired again. This round struck the Panther's forward right side, penetrating drive wheel assembly and setting engine compartment ablaze. The crew bailed out immediately. German training emphasized that 75mm guns couldn't threaten Panthers. This assumption died in flames across that French valley. Within 11 minutes, Klein's platoon destroyed 7 Panthers by maintaining perfect fire discipline, waiting for optimal side-angle shots, and executing with precision that made gun caliber irrelevant. But the action was far from over. German forces, recognizing the threat, called forward additional Panthers with instructions to engage the American position from long range where the obsolete guns couldn't penetrate frontal armor. This conventional response to tank destroyer ambush was exactly what American doctrine anticipated. As Panthers maneuvered for frontal engagement, Klein's platoon executed the critical shoot-and-scoot displacement that differentiated tank destroyers from tanks. Within 90 seconds of the last shot fired, all 4 M10s had withdrawn from their firing positions, using pre-scouted routes through the forest to secondary ambush positions 1,500 yards south. German Panthers, now facing empty positions, advanced to secure what they assumed was the American defensive line. This brought them directly into the engagement area of the platoon's new positions, again presenting side armor to concealed American guns. Over the next 2 hours, Klein's platoon would destroy 5 additional Panthers through 3 successive ambush displacement ambush sequences. By 1800 hours, 12 Panthers lay destroyed or disabled across 5 square kilometers of French countryside. Klein's platoon suffered 0 losses, minor splinter damage to 1 vehicle from near-miss artillery. The 4 M10s, mounting obsolete 75mm guns, had achieved a 12-0 kill ratio against Germany's premier medium tank in 4 hours of combat. The after-action report, filed November 25th, documented precise gunnery statistics. 18 rounds fired total, 12 hits, 6 misses due to target movement. Average engagement range, 620 yards. All penetrations against side or rear armor at angles between 55 and 90 degrees. Average time from first shot to target destruction, 1.7 seconds. Average displacement time between firing positions, 73 seconds. These numbers revealed the truth German technical intelligence had missed. The 75mm gun wasn't obsolete. Frontal assault doctrine was obsolete. When employed by superbly trained crews, using proper tactics against targets maneuvered into vulnerable positions, the M10's gun remained devastatingly effective. The Guebling action wasn't unique. Throughout the Lorraine campaign, M10 battalions consistently achieved exceptional results despite mounting guns that theoretically couldn't threaten German armor. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion at Aracourt destroyed 39 German tanks, predominantly Panthers, for 4 M10 losses. The 628th Tank Destroyer Battalion in the Saar campaign destroyed 41 tanks for 7 M10 losses. Analysis revealed patterns that explained these results. 93% of M10 kills occurred at ranges under 1,000 yards. 87% involved side or rear armor penetration. 74% were first-shot hits, demonstrating exceptional crew training. Average engagement duration was under 4 minutes before M10s displaced to alternate positions. German crews, by contrast, showed consistent patterns that made them vulnerable. Doctrine emphasized frontal engagement at maximum range, typically 2,000 to 3,000 yards where their superior guns dominated. This made them predictable. Routes of advance were obvious, limited by terrain. Turret orientation favored forward threat axis, leaving flanks exposed. Displacement after engagement was slow, averaging 50 to 7 minutes. American crews exploited every aspect of this predictability. Tank destroyer doctrine taught at Camp Hood, Texas, emphasized reconnaissance to identify likely enemy routes, preparation of multiple firing positions with good concealment and covered withdrawal routes, patience to allow optimal target presentation, precise gunnery to ensure first-shot kills, and immediate displacement after engagement. The revolutionary battle conditioning course at Camp Hood, where crews trained under live fire overhead, created soldiers who could execute these complex tasks under extreme stress. By late 1944, veteran M10 crews could identify German tank models at 2,000 yards through vision ports, calculate optimal ambush positions, accounting for terrain and likely enemy behavior, estimate precise range without rangefinders by using terrain features, and execute flank shots against moving targets with 90% first-round hit probability. This training quality differential was decisive. German tank crews by autumn 1944 increasingly consisted of hastily trained replacements. Fuel shortages, limited training opportunities. Veteran crews were increasingly rare. American crews, conversely, received extensive training before deployment, typically 20 weeks, including 12 weeks at Camp Hood, plus additional time at unit level. The M10's design features, often criticized as compromises, actually facilitated the tactics that made it effective. The open-topped turret, considered a vulnerability, provided superior situational awareness compared to enclosed German turrets. Commanders could observe 360 degrees without vision blocks. This awareness proved critical for identifying threats and opportunities. The five-man crew, larger than the four-man crews of most German tanks, allowed better division of labor. Commander focused purely on tactical decisions and target acquisition. Gunner concentrated solely on precision fire. Loader maintained firing rate. Driver maneuvered based on commander's direction. Assistant driver operated bow machine gun and assisted with navigation. This specialization enabled faster reaction times than German crews, where commanders handled both tactical decisions and gunnery direction. The diesel engine in 54% of M10s provided unexpected advantages. While slower than gasoline engines, diesels were less flammable when penetrated, significantly improving crew survival. The diesel's torque characteristics also provided better low-speed control, critical for precise positioning in ambush situations. Range was equally important. 200 miles for diesel M10s meant extended operations without resupply, while German tanks, by late 1944, often operated on critically limited fuel allocations. This range advantage allowed American tank destroyer battalions to conduct deep raids into German rear areas, targeting supply columns and command posts that German doctrine never anticipated having to defend against armored attack. The ammunition load, 54 rounds for the 75mm gun, provided sufficient capacity for extended engagements. German Panthers carried 79 rounds for their 75mm gun, but American doctrine emphasized quality over quantity. 54 precisely aimed shots from optimal positions achieved more than 79 rounds fired from disadvantaged angles. American logistics ensured consistent ammunition resupply. Every M10 battalion included organic ammunition trucks, maintaining flow of fresh rounds to forward positions. German units by late 1944 often fought with degraded ammunition supplies, using training rounds or degraded propellant when first-line stocks were exhausted. The M10's greatest advantage was availability. With 4,993 produced, M10 battalions equipped 36 tank destroyer battalions by war's end. Germany produced approximately 6,000 Panthers total during the entire war. The mathematics meant that American forces could afford tactical experimentation and operational risks that German forces, fighting with irreplaceable assets, could not. By December 1944, German tactical manuals had been updated to reflect M10 capabilities. New guidance warned that American tank destroyers with obsolete guns remained highly dangerous when properly employed, recommended immediate smoke deployment upon contact, emphasized need for all-around security, even in seemingly rear areas, and directed commanders to avoid predictable routes and timetables. These modifications came too late. American tank destroyer doctrine had achieved maturity through combat experience across North Africa, Italy, and France. M10 crews understood their vehicles' capabilities and limitations with precision that German crews, still learning their new Panthers and Tigers, couldn't match. The Battle of the Bulge, in December 1944 to January 1945, saw M10 battalions achieve their highest kill ratios. The 614th Tank Destroyer Battalion destroyed 53 German tanks while losing 11 M10s. The 823rd destroyed 47 for 9 losses. The 634th achieved 43 kills for 8 losses. These actions occurred in weather conditions that grounded air support and reduced visibility to hundreds of yards, exactly the conditions where M10 advantages maximized. German heavy tanks struggled through snow and mud. M10s, lighter with better ground pressure distribution, maintained mobility. Close-range engagements negated German gunnery advantages while playing to American strengths in crew training and tactical flexibility. Statistical analysis of M10 combat performance revealed patterns that validated American doctrine. Overall, M10 battalions achieved approximately 8,100 enemy vehicles destroyed throughout the war, including tanks, self-propelled guns, armored cars, and half-tracks. Against approximately 1,000 M10s lost to enemy action, this produced an 8-to-1 kill ratio. Tank versus tank engagements showed even better results. Confirmed tank kills numbered approximately 2,300 against German armor of all types. With roughly 700 M10s lost specifically to enemy tank fire, the tank versus tank kill ratio approached 3.3 to 1, second only to the M18 Hellcats ratio. Individual unit achievements often exceeded these averages. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion claimed 126 enemy armored vehicles destroyed. The 601st and 603rd Battalions each exceeded 100 kills. The 899th Battalion of Guebling fame finished the war with 97 confirmed tank kills. Loss analysis provided insights into combat realities. Approximately 45% of M10 casualties resulted from enemy tank and anti-tank gunfire, confirming that German guns could penetrate M10 armor when they achieved hits. Another 30% came from mines and infantry anti-tank weapons. 15% resulted from artillery fire. 10% were mechanical breakdowns or non-combat losses. The fundamental difference between German and American armored philosophy becomes clear through comparative analysis. German doctrine emphasized technological superiority and frontal engagement. Build heavier tanks with thicker armor and more powerful guns. Engage enemy armor at maximum range, where German advantages dominated. Rely on superior equipment to compensate for tactical disadvantages. American doctrine emphasized tactical superiority and system effectiveness. Build adequate equipment in overwhelming numbers. Train crews to exceptional standards. Develop tactics that negated enemy strengths while exploiting their weaknesses. Rely on superior execution to compensate for equipment limitations. The Panther, weighing 44.8 tons with 80mm frontal armor and 75mm high-velocity gun, capable of penetrating 138mm at 1,000 yards, represented German philosophy perfectly, superior in nearly every measurable specification to the M10's 57mm frontal armor and gun penetrating just 92mm at the same range. Yet, in combat, M10s consistently destroyed Panthers at rates approaching 3 to 1. This apparent contradiction revealed that specifications measured in factories mattered less than performance measured on battlefields. The Panthers' advantages in armor and firepower meant nothing when M10 crews maneuvered them into positions where those advantages were irrelevant. German crews who survived encounters with M10 tank destroyers reported similar experiences. American vehicles appeared from impossible positions, waited until German tanks presented vulnerable angles, fired with remarkable accuracy, achieving first-shot kills, and disappeared before effective return fire could be brought to bear. The American guns, which should have been obsolete, seemed devastatingly effective when employed with perfect tactical precision. Post-war interviews with German tank commanders revealed that by late 1944, American tank destroyers were more feared than American tanks. Shermans were expected threats that German crews understood. Tank destroyers mounting supposedly obsolete guns, but operated by crews who refused to engage frontally, were terrifying unknowns that German doctrine provided no effective counter. The obsolete 75mm gun debate continued post-war among military analysts. Some argued that earlier adoption of 76mm and 90mm guns would have improved effectiveness. Others contended that the M10's success proved gun caliber was secondary to crew quality and tactical employment. Combat records suggest both perspectives hold truth while missing the larger point. Yes, more powerful guns provided advantages, particularly in situations requiring frontal engagement. But No, gun caliber alone didn't determine combat outcomes. The M10's achievement was demonstrating that adequate equipment, properly employed by well-trained crews, could defeat theoretically superior opponents. This lesson extended beyond tank destroyers. The entire American war effort exemplified this philosophy. Sherman tanks, with inferior guns and armor, defeated German heavy tanks through numbers, reliability, and crew quality. P-51 Mustangs, with specifications inferior to late-war German fighters, achieved air superiority through production numbers and pilot training. American infantry, with weapons less powerful than German equivalents, won through logistics, combined arms coordination, and tactical flexibility. The M10 tank destroyer, dismissed as obsolete by mid-1944, embodied these principles perfectly. Its 75mm gun couldn't penetrate Panther frontal armor. This limitation forced American crews to develop tactics that negated the need for frontal penetration. Those tactics, refined through combat experience and executed by superbly trained crews, achieved results that superior German equipment couldn't match. At Guebling on November 23, 1944, Lieutenant Klein's platoon demonstrated this principle definitively. 12 Panthers destroyed in 4 hours by 4 M10s mounting obsolete guns, not through technological superiority, not through better equipment specifications, but through perfect execution of fundamentals the German crews had forgotten in their reliance on superior firepower. The engagement report, filed by 11th Panzer Division that evening, noted bitterly that American tank destroyers, mounting known obsolete weapons, achieved tactical surprise through employment methods that German doctrine considered impractical. Recommendation that future operations account for American willingness to sacrifice equipment advantages for tactical positioning. This recommendation came too late. By November 1944, American tank destroyer doctrine had achieved maturity that German armored forces, still adjusting to defeats on both eastern and western fronts, couldn't match. The obsolete guns that German intelligence dismissed had been welded to tactical excellence that made obsolescence irrelevant. Today, at Fort Moore, Georgia, formerly Fort Benning, a restored M10 tank destroyer stands in the Armor Museum. Its plaque commemorates the most produced American tank destroyer of World War II, and proof that tactical excellence and crew training could enable obsolete equipment to defeat technologically superior opponents. The final accounting of the M10's service reveals its true impact. Production total, 4,993 vehicles, manufactured between September 1942 and December 1943 at Fisher Body Division. Grand Blanc, Michigan. Peak production, 227 units in March 1943. Unit cost, $58,600 in 1943. Combat record, approximately 8,100 enemy vehicles destroyed. Confirmed, approximately 2,300 tanks, specifically M10s. Lost to enemy action, approximately 1,000. Overall kill ratio, 8.1 to 1. Tank versus tank ratio, 3.3 to 1. These statistics don't capture the psychological impact of an enemy that refused to fight according to expected patterns. German crews trained to exploit Panther superiority in frontal engagements found themselves dying to flank shots from guns that shouldn't have threatened them. The confusion and fear this generated had operational effects beyond mere loss ratios. German commanders, uncertain where obsolete American guns might next appear, became increasingly cautious with their irreplaceable armor. Attacks were delayed for reconnaissance. Advances were slowed to secure flanks. Initiative was surrendered to caution. The mere presence of M10 battalions in a sector could freeze German armored operations for hours. For German tank crews who experienced combat against M10 tank destroyers, the lesson was brutal and lasting. Technological superiority meant nothing against opponents who refused to engage on terms where that superiority mattered. The supposedly obsolete 75mm gun remained devastatingly effective in the hands of crews who understood that perfect positioning mattered more than perfect penetration. The M10's legacy extends beyond World War II. Modern military doctrine's emphasis on combined arms coordination, the importance of crew training over equipment specifications, and the principle that tactical excellence can overcome technological disadvantage, all trace roots to lessons learned from M10 employment in 1944 to 45. The 4 hours at Guebling encapsulated these lessons perfectly. 12 Panthers, representing hundreds of thousands of Reichsmarks and irreplaceable production capacity, destroyed by 4 vehicles mounting guns, everyone agreed, were obsolete. The difference lay not in equipment, but in the men operating it and the doctrine guiding their employment. For Lieutenant Klein's crew, those 4 hours validated every hour spent training at Camp Hood, every tactical principle drilled into memory, every gunnery lesson practiced until perfect execution became instinctive. Their obsolete gun in their expert hands, positioned at perfect ambush points, firing at optimal angles against predictable German tactics, achieved what German engineering couldn't prevent. For German Hauptmann Werner Stolz, watching 12 Panthers burn across that French valley, those 4 hours shattered every comfortable assumption about American inadequacy and German superiority. His notebook entry that evening reflected bitter understanding. The American guns are obsolete, only if we are foolish enough to let them engage on their terms. We were that foolish today. 12 Panthers learned this lesson. Their crews will not learn any others. The 75mm gun, dismissed, mocked and labeled obsolete, offered a lasting lesson about warfare. Obsolescence is not inherent, nor is it permanent. It is contextual. A weapon is only obsolete when used in ways that highlight its weaknesses rather than its strengths. When placed in the right hands, governed by sound doctrine, and employed in conditions that favor its advantages, even aging technology can become decisively lethal. The M10 tank destroyer, armed with such a supposedly inferior gun, defied expectations during those fateful hours near Guebling. It proved that combat effectiveness is not simply a matter of engineering, mechanics, or caliber size. It is the result of how men, machines, training, doctrine, and circumstance intersect on the battlefield. The M10 was never meant to duel German heavy armor head-on. It was designed according to a different philosophy: mobility, speed, and precise, long-range ambush fire, rather than brute force. Its thin armor, open turret, and limited protection were not design flaws. They were design trade-offs. Its engineers never intended for it to be a better tank than those it faced, such as the Panther or Tiger. Instead, it was built to be employed differently, as an ambush predator, a flanking shooter, a tool for maneuver and surprise. The 75mm gun in those hands became something greater than its specifications, something tactical, strategic, and psychological. Those who judged it solely by its penetration numbers, muzzle velocity, or armor thickness missed the essence of war. Combat is not fought in laboratories, proving grounds, or design offices. It is fought in fog, fear, exhaustion, and chaos. It is fought not on test ranges, but in hedgerows, forests, fog banks, and urban rubble. Technical excellence matters, but it rarely decides battles on its own. What decides them is adaptability, the ability of humans to take what they have, however imperfect, and use it in ways the enemy does not anticipate. The German Panthers that clashed with the M10s near Guebling represented the pinnacle of armored engineering. Sloped armor, high-velocity guns, advanced optics, and superior frontal protection. They were intimidating, sophisticated, and lethal. But they had limitations: a narrow turret traverse, a vulnerability in their flanks, and operational constraints in poor terrain. They were powerful when employed correctly, disastrous when employed incorrectly. Their designers optimized them for long-range, open-field duels, not for the fog-shrouded farmland and narrow defiles around Guebling. The American tank destroyer crews understood this, not only because of training, but because of doctrine. They weren't simply tank crews, they were hunters. Their instructors had trained them to abandon the tank mindset. They were not meant to exchange fire, they were meant to choose when to fire. They were not to withstand blows, they were to avoid them entirely. Doctrine taught them to exploit speed, stealth, and terrain, to strike not where the enemy was strong, but where he was blind. In that context, the 75mm gun became more than adequate. It became precise, rapid, and devastating. Those 4 hours near Guebling illustrated something that military theorists often debated, but rarely witnessed so vividly: that the outcome of combat is rarely determined by who has the best tool, but by who uses their tools best. The M10s did not succeed because they were superior machines. They succeeded because they fought a superior machine in a superior way. One by one, the Panthers fell, not to frontal duels, but to flanking shots, to ambushes staged from concealed positions, to engagements deliberately chosen by the Americans. Training transformed the M10 crews into masters of timing. They knew how long to wait before revealing their positions. They knew how to fire and relocate before the Panthers could return fire. They knew how to use terrain and mist to break enemy vision. And, perhaps most importantly, they had discipline. They did not fire when they wanted to, they fired when they must. The 75mm gun may not have had impressive raw power, but in skilled hands, in invisible positions, striking exposed flanks at precise moments, it proved more than lethal. In those hours lay the difference between theory and practice, between reading specifications and understanding combat. One could read that the 75mm gun could not penetrate the Panthers' frontal armor. On paper, that seemed decisive. But paper does not record the fact that nobody was shooting at its front. Nobody approached it from direction of its strength. Specifications measure steel and explosive force. They do not measure patience, cunning, or the decision to wait another 15 seconds before pulling the trigger. The Germans had engineering excellence. The Americans had operational pragmatism. The Germans built the best tanks they could. The Americans built enough tanks, enough guns, enough radios, enough maps. They built machines that could be maintained on muddy roads, that could be repaired under trees, that could be resupplied from convoys using interchangeable parts. And most critically, they built machines that could be mastered quickly by average crews, not just elite specialists. That was the essence of American effectiveness. Not perfection, but usability. Not invincibility, but flexibility. The M10 did not need to be better. It needed to be everywhere, always ready, always coordinated, always supported. The Germans, forced by shortages and over-complex engineering, could not match that scale. They produced 6 Panthers for every 10 M10s. They could field 1 well-trained crew for every 3 hastily trained American crews. They could not repair their tanks under improvised conditions, nor replace lost optics, nor deliver spare road wheels in time. In those 4 hours, the Germans witnessed something they had feared, but not fully understood, that industrial warfare was not about the best machine, but about the best system. The M10 was not a single machine. It was the product of a system that included supply chains, training programs, doctrine manuals, fuel convoys, maintenance crews, communications networks, and planning organizations. The 75mm gun was not just mounted on a vehicle, it was backed by an army that knew how to use it. Obsolescence, then, is not just about equipment, it is about imagination. It is about whether commanders and crews can envision how a weapon might still be useful, even when others have dismissed it. It is about understanding that a weapon is not just its caliber or armor. It is a tool shaped by doctrine, humans, and circumstances. When the Panthers rolled into those killing fields, they did not face the 75mm gun. They faced a philosophy. That philosophy said, do not meet strength with weakness. Do not engage on the enemy's terms. Choose the moment. Choose the angle, choose the terrain. Strike once, strike hard, then disappear. That philosophy turned obsolete into unexpected, and unexpected into decisive. It showed that in war, surprise is a force multiplier more powerful than armor thickness. It proved that psychology, fear of unseen enemies, of invisible threats, of silent guns waiting in tree lines, can destroy a unit before the first shot is fired. The M10 and the 75mm guns it carried may not have been the best weapons in the war, but They may have been among the best used. Their crews may not have been elite, but they were trained for their mission. Their doctrine may not have emphasized power, but it emphasized timing, movement, and initiative. And those qualities, timing, movement, and initiative, are as decisive in modern warfare as they were 8 decades ago. Today, armies around the world face the same dilemma. Should they chase perfect technology or build adaptable systems? Should they create machines that can overpower all enemies or systems that can adapt to any enemy? History whispers its answer through Guebling. The future belongs not to those who build the strongest tools, but to those who use tools most intelligently. Modern warfare is filled with technologies that appear obsolete on paper, but lethal in practice. Drones, built from hobby parts, routinely destroy armored vehicles worth millions. Artillery pieces, designed before the digital age, are now guided by modern reconnaissance and strike with terrifying accuracy. Old weapons, paired with new doctrine and modern training, become something far more potent than their designers imagined. The 75mm gun did not win the war. It did something much more important. It told it how wars are won. It proved that combat effectiveness is not found in the specifications sheet, but in the human spirit. It showed that weaknesses become strengths when doctrine makes them so. And it demonstrated that sometimes obsolete is just another word for underestimated. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.